Did the U.S. government have the right to take away the basic civil rights of the Japanese Americans, and were the Japanese treated unfairly? Back in 1942, many Japanese Americans were incarcerated in camps during World War II. The act was called the Japanese internment. The Japanese internment occurred because the American government feared that they would be loyal to Japan and not to the United States of America. So they incarcerated them because they believed it would protect them.
More than 120,000 people with Japanese ancestry that lived on the West Coast were forced to evacuate their homes, jobs, and families to go to the camps. They only had 7 days to take care of shutting down their businesses, leaving their homes, and getting rid of pets and belongings they weren't allowed to bring. They could only bring what they could carry. There were 10 internment camps and were only located on the West Coast. Most of these camps were located in California, Arizona, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, and Arkansas. The population of the camps for Amateur, Colorado was 7,318, and it was opened on August 27, 1942. Gila River, Arizona's population was 13,348 and was opened on July 20, 1942. Heart Mountain, Wyoming's population was 10,767 and was opened on August 12, 1942. Jerome, Arkansas's population was 8,497 and was opened on October 6, 1942. The population of Manzanar, California was 10,046 and it was opened on March 21, 1942. Minidoka, Idaho's population was 9,397 and was opened on August 10, 1942. The population of Boston, Arizona was 17,814 and was opened on May 8, 1942. Roar, Arkansas's population was 8,475 and was opened on September 18, 1942. Topaz, Utah's population was 8,130 and was opened on September 11, 1942. Tule Lake, California's population was 18,789 and was opened on May 27, 1942. The camps were officially called relocation camps, and the incarceration of the Japanese lasted for about 4 years.
The Japanese were living under unpleasant circumstances. The Japanese were forced to live like animals. When they showered, it was in the open. Their rooms were small. They had no water in their rooms. They also had no privacy and did not even have a kitchen to be able to prepare their foods. And if they were lucky, they would have one light per room. Some Japanese died in the concentration camps due to lack of medical care.
I'm here in Washington, D.C. on my spring break, spending a lot of time in the Smithsonian. I enjoy World War II history.
I'm sending Nathan and his dad back into the lost to see some not-so-typical wartime artifacts. Cedric Ye is a curator in the Division of Armed Forces History.
What we're going to be looking at today is watercolors by Akio Ujihara.
Ujihara was a 44-year-old engineer from Los Angeles. He was also one of many Americans detained during World War II, simply because he was of Japanese descent. The chapter of history these watercolors depict is rarely discussed.
This is just his personal way of remembering what life was like in the camps. This one is from Manzanar. And these two are from Topaz.
After Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, the U.S. government set up 10 internment camps across the West. They detained over 100,000 Japanese Americans perceived as a threat to the war effort. Half of those detained were children.
You know, it really wasn't that long ago. People that were in these camps, some of them are still alive. And
So many of them.
In fact, Nathan is about to meet one. Betty Tyra was only 8 when her family was sent into the Heart Mountain internment camp in Wyoming.
There were 5 in our family, an older sister, a younger brother, and my parents. And each of us was allowed to take one suitcase. But it was too much for my brother and for me. So from a family of 5, we only had 3 suitcases.
Every family was issued a number.
There were 6 units in a barrack. They were non-insulated buildings. It wasn't even this big, but it had a window on one side and a window on the other, one incandescent light. There was no sink, no bathroom, no stove, but it was just a barren room and 5 cots.
Yeah, what kind of food?
You know, they tried to cook rice, but it was either too soft or crunchy, and lots of pork and beans. It was not our normal diet.
Betty's family spent nearly a year in the camps.
I'm so curious, what happened to you?
We moved to Washington, D.C. I went to junior high school. High school, I graduated from the University of Maryland. You know, this war experience spurred many Japanese Americans. They did so much to prove their loyalty. They went to school and they have become very successful people in all walks of life. So from that disaster, I think that it spurred us to become even better people.
It also spurred us to become a better country. Ultimately, the U.S. government apologized to Japanese American families for the incarceration.
The kids were also denied their freedom. Half of the 120,000 Japanese that were incarcerated were children. They were still forced to go to school and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Sometimes the children were separated from their families. The children also had to do chores. They were also under strict authority. The children would be identified by tags. The guards would lock the gates to prevent them from leaving.
That stereotype of Asian Americans as the enemy was all too real for George Takei from his very youngest days growing up in Los Angeles.
I remember that morning. In fact, I can never forget that morning. It was a terrifying morning. I was in the living room looking out the front window, and I saw 2 soldiers come marching up our driveway. And I saw at the end of their rifles shiny bayonets. They stomped up to our front door at our 2-bedroom home on Garnet Street in Los Angeles and banged on the front door. It was terrifying. My father answered and we were ordered out of our home.
George Takei's family had committed no crime. Along with thousands of other law-abiding Japanese Americans, they were taken from their home in California in 1942 and forced to relocate to an internment camp. The reason was this. On December 7, 1941, Japan bombed the U.S. Navy base in Pearl Harbor. Overnight, America was at war with Japan, and the U.S. government became suspicious of anyone of Japanese heritage. As a group, these U.S. citizens were labeled by their government as enemy non-aliens.
What's a non-alien? That's a citizen. They couldn't even call us citizens then. We were enemy non-aliens. Why? Because of this. We were taken to the horse stables. And thinking back now, I can't imagine how degrading and humiliating it must have been for my parents to take their 3 children, one a baby, from a 2-bedroom home and told to sleep in that narrow, smelly horse stall. I remember the barbed wire fences and the sentry tower, the searchlight that followed me when I made the night runs from our barrack to the latrine. It was a racist act, pure and simple, and it was an unconstitutional act. I mean, you can't imprison people for their race, and that's what we were imprisoned for.
Many rights were violated in the camps. For example, like the freedom of religion. In the camps, they were not able to practice their Shinto religion. Another freedom that was violated was freedom of speech because they were not allowed to speak their language in public meetings. Another right that was violated was freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures. The Japanese Americans' homes were searched without a warrant.
Many rights were violated in the camps, for example, like their freedom of religion. In the camps, they were not able to practice their Shinto religion. Another freedom that was violated was freedom of speech, because they were not allowed to speak their language in public meetings. Another right that was violated was freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures. The Japanese American home was searched without a warrant or any type of due process.
The Japanese were treated very unfairly and had to deal with living in unpleasant circumstances. They had to deal with living in a country where it's all about having freedom, but on the other hand, they had their rights taken away and were treated like they were animals and not human beings. In our opinion, none of this was necessary, helpful, or fair. So, in the end, were the Japanese really an enemy to us?